Greetings everybody, I am Lobo and welcome back to the garage. Today's project is going to be a request basically. That request was to make a 1x1 piston door on the ground that can be opened by throwing an item in a hopper. Now there's two ways I could interpret this. Number one, the most likely way is that you want a piston door in the ground that's 1x1 they can throw an item into and, have it open up for you. The other way I can interpret this is that you want a 1x1 piston door on ground level that you can, open up the same way. Now, I'm not sure how useful this is unless you're a mouse or otherwise very short, but we're going to go ahead and use the same mechanics for both of these, even though there is a simpler way to do this one right here. Now, I'm not viewing this video on these doors right here as a tutorial because, there's probably a simpler and more compact way to do what we're about to do. But since I haven't done doors like this before, I kind of wanted us to figure it out together. So I think we'll start off with this kind of piston arrangement right here. So this is going to be our closing sequence. It's going to go just like that. And this will be our opening sequence. So you can kind of see like everything I've done here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So let's figure out how we're going to actually activate this stuff. Now you said you wanted to throw an item into a hopper to activate this, but the problem is if we have our hopper hidden beneath a full block, whatever item we throw in there is just going to end up sitting on top of that block. The hopper's not going to pick it up. Now we could use half slabs. We could make this easier to work with, but I think especially over here, I do want to use full blocks just for the added complexity of it. Now you could technically run your hoppers all the way up to the surface and throw a carpet over it. That would work, but it would be much less fun than putting a minecart with hopper inside of a block and just having the minecart with hopper pick up whatever block you want to use to open your door like that. So I think that's what we're going to use. That's the system we're going to use here. So let's go ahead and start getting this thing built. What we're going to do is probably put our input right here, right in front of the block that we're opening. And I think I want to have our minecart with hopper sitting on top of an actual hopper and have it feeding into something from which we can get our item back from, because we do want to get whatever item we throw in there back, right? So I think we're probably going to end up putting the hopper facing backwards. So we'll face it this way, face it this way, facing towards the back. There we go. And then we'll set our rail right on top of that. The minecart with hopper goes directly on top of the rail, and then we break the rail. No, not the minecart, the rail. And now our minecart with hopper is sitting directly on top of the hopper and ready to feed items into it. Now we do want this hidden, so we want to use the same kind of block that we're using for our floor, but I am going to go ahead and pick up this light blue concrete, and we're going to use that for our example so we can tell where our input actually is. So what we want to do then is take a piston, put a piston right here, and get it ready to push that block into our minecart with hopper, completely hiding it. And then we'll break the piston first and then the block that's powering the piston because we no longer need those. And then we can go ahead and start extending our floor because we will be walking straight back from this opening. Or crawling. Crawling seems a little more likely. Now, as I said, we are going to want to get our key back, so we're going to place a dropper facing upwards somewhere along our path, and this seems like a good spot to do so. So we'll go ahead and mark that with a blue piece of concrete so we know where it is, and we'll just run hoppers all the way back to it, so that way whenever we throw an item in there, it makes its way to the dropper. For instance, if we were to throw this hopper in there, that will go down all those hoppers and eventually make its way right over here. Now I'm going to put a pressure plate on top of that dropper so any items that make their way to that dropper get shot up once we step on this pressure plate, just like that. So that is it for the item transportation into the dropper. Now we need to figure out how items in that dropper are going to actually activate our piston door. So I think what we're going to do is probably take a comparator signal out of this dropper on both sides. So we'll do one for this side and then one for this side right here. So on top of those blocks I just put down, what we're going to do is take our comparators and we're going to put one facing this way and another one facing this way, and those are going to both be facing into blocks such as these right here. Now we need to go ahead and figure out how we're going to route this. So the order of the pistons is, how is it? It goes this side first, so this would be A, then this would be B, and then this would be B, and then this would be A. So we could use an ABBA switch here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to run two separate circuits, one controlling each side. Reason being that it's, on first drafts of Redstone projects, it's usually more simple for me if I'm able to adjust stuff, and that's easier with two separate things rather than having one circuit that controls everything, So what we're going to do is place two redstone torches down just like that, which means that these pistons are going to be extended and closed when those torches are on, but when we get an item into our dropper, those torches will turn off, and so will our pistons, and that will retract our door, opening it up. Now let's go ahead and get our A circuit done. So we want a block right here and a piece of redstone dust on top of it. That's our A circuit, and the power has to last through both B's, right? A, B, B, A. So what we're going to do is, I think, run this through a pulse extender. I think we're going to place a very simple pulse extender right here to make sure it lasts through both the retraction and extension of the second piston. So we'll just have comparators facing in opposite directions with redstone dust on either side of them. Then we're just going to take the opposite side of that pulse extender and run it up to the top so that way it can power our pistons. So we can get rid of this switch right here and basically just throw down a bunch of redstone dust, and I will fix this later. I know this looks super messy. I will fix it later, I promise. But now our A circuit should be working, and if we throw an item in there, then after a short delay, it should open up. That might actually be too long of a delay though. I think that might actually be too long of a delay. So what we can do here, I think, is probably get rid of this, and we'll just put a block down a little bit lower in place of that comparator, and then we'll just run a piece of redstone dust up there. So that should cause this circuit to kick off in half the time, right? So let's go ahead and get our item back, and then we'll throw another item in here and see how that works. Okay, yeah, I think we can roll with that. Let's go ahead and move on to our B circuit. So we're going to place a block over top of the redstone torch, and we're just going to run a line to the block that we want to have powered, right? So then from that point, I think what we're going to do is take a piece of redstone dust, put that on top of the block where our torch is, which would be this block right here. We'll run our redstone signal like that, and we'll put a repeater in here because we do want a little bit of delay in this. So we'll set it for 2 ticks and just see how that works for us. Adjustments may need to be made, but I think this should work. So let's go ahead and throw our item in there, and nothing. We have yeah, let's go ahead and get rid of that. Get rid of all levers. Get rid of all levers at this point. All right, let's go ahead and get our item out, and we'll give this one more shot. So we'll throw an item in here just like this, and then just a hair too late. That's a hair too much delay. Let's go ahead and put this on default ticks. We'll keep that like that, and then let's go ahead and give this another test run. Let's go ahead and get our item out of the dispenser or out of the dropper. We'll throw another item in there and see what happens. Come on. Yes, that is our opening sequence, and that is our closing sequence. That's it. Let's see this one more time. So opening, yes, and closing. Perfect. Yes. Now, as I said, this could definitely stand to be cleaned up a little bit, especially on this side. So what I think we're going to do is run that comparator into a block right there. That should accomplish the exact same thing, meaning we can get rid of all this, and then we can put a redstone dust right there. And that's it. That's the same system, just much prettier. Let's go ahead and hop into survival mode, and we'll give this thing a little bit of a test run. So I think I know how we can make use of this door. We're going to need Elytra though. So we're going to go ahead and throw our Elytra on, and then we're going to go ahead and use our lever to open up this door, and that will open up our 1x1. We can run up to it and then activate the Elytra, and that should enable us to crawl through here. And then we get a lever back. That is awesome. Okay. Now, I did not figure out how we were going to get out of here. Huh. Let's switch colors and build our exit circuit. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to power those redstone torches, which will cut them off and set our system into action when we activate this line right here. So we're just going to put a repeater facing into this block or a repeater facing into this block, and then we're going to connect them with a line of redstone dust like this. Then we can go ahead and take a button, put that button over the redstone dust. So once we activate this button, our door should open. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. And it works, but briefly. So I think we're just going to need to add a pulse extender in there. So again, this is just 2 comparators facing opposite directions with redstone dust on each side, just like this. And now this should be working for us. So yes, plenty of time. That is plenty of time to exit. Back in survival mode, let's give this another shot. We'll activate our Elytra, and to get through this, you actually have to press a sprint button. You have to sprint through the hole, but then you come through, the door closes behind you, you get your lever back. That is awesome. Let's try to exit this thing. So we'll run up, activate Elytra, and okay, it's going to take a little practice. It's going to take a little getting used to, but I think we can go ahead and do this. There we go, and then I left my lever inside. I went back into the system. Of course, it goes back into the system. That's the only place it can go. So I'll run back through here and get it. But for future reference, probably best not to place blocks as you're going through this door. And it's also going to take a little bit of practice. Where is my lever? Where is my lever? Now, if you do choose to build this yourself, one last piece of information to get your item back every time, you want to have the area above the dropper be a 3x3 of full solid blocks. That will ensure that the item goes up through the floor to you rather than off to the side somewhere. But I think we can go ahead and call this project done. So this is meant to be more of a proof of concept, but if you actually want a mouse door, there is an easier way to do this. If we come over here, you'll see we have one piston, and if we retract that one piston, then we have an open mouse door. Yeah, pretty simple, but not quite as fun. But let's go ahead and get this one wired up together, and we'll see if we can make this guy work as well. You know, easier way of doing things. So we're going to want our hopper facing sideways since we can't run it straight back through that piston. So I think we're going to do is the whole block in a minecart thing once again up here. And now that we have that hopper minecart hidden within that block and looking very stealthy, might I say, we can go ahead and move on to the rest of the wiring of this thing. So I know that we're going to need at least 2 blocks between the dropper and this piston right here. We're going to need a block for our redstone. It's going to activate a torch, and we're going to need a block for a comparator coming out of that dropper. So I think our dropper is going to go back here, probably on this 3rd block right here. I think this looks right. That looks like a pretty good distance. So we'll go ahead and put our dropper right up here like this. And then what we're going to do is throw our comparator in right here and a piece of redstone dust right here. Now this redstone dust is actually going to activate a torch and not the piston, so we're going to put the torch right here, and then I think we're going to divert this redstone dust sideways so that way it does not interfere with the piston. Only the torch has control of that. So then we need to reroute our hoppers a little bit to the side of our circuitry. You can go away. We need to reroute our hoppers this way. And then I think what we can do is go ahead and see if this actually works. We'll see if make sure nothing's blocking up the hoppers or anything. So if we throw an item in here, the door does open. Great. That's a great sign. Okay. So from there, we can do a 3x3 of solid blocks over top of this dropper, just like we did in the past. And we're going to put a pressure plate in the middle of that. So we'll go ahead and throw that thing down right there. And when we step on that, we get our item back and the door closes just like that. Now this would probably be a good time to get our floors and walls in, and this time I'm going to use a half slab for this piece of floor right here, and then I'm going to go ahead and extend our walls back a little bit. Of course we could go more open with this if we wanted to, but I'm going to leave it 1 wide just for the sake of simplicity. So what I think we're going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and raise this redstone up just a tiny bit. I'm going to put that right there and then put a piece of redstone dust on top of that. The half slab does not interfere with that, but it does keep our redstone diverted so that way it's not facing the piston. So you can see that it's not interfering with the piston in any way. And then we can go ahead and put a button in here. Now, I forgot to mention with this, you don't actually need to use a button. You can use a pressure plate. You can use whatever activation method you want. But for these examples, we are going to go ahead and use a button. Now, you see the door opens, and we just need a pulse extender to hold it open a little bit longer. And we know how to build those, right? It's just 2 comparators facing in opposite directions. Now that block right there, that comparator's facing into, that acts as a piece of redstone dust. So this is just a more compact way of doing that. But as you can see right here, if we push the button, it accomplishes the same thing. The door will remain open until that comparator goes off, giving us plenty of time to exit. Now, moving back over to mouse door number 1, I told you we could get rid of this button, and you know, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. So what we can do is we can move this pressure plate back a little bit to the block behind our dropper. So what we're going to then do is make sure we get a block under that block that we have our pressure plate on top of, which would be 1 back from the dropper, which would be right here, and I'm using green for that, just so we can kind of see. So the dropper is underneath that blue block, okay? So we're just putting the pressure plate 1 back from that, and we're going to throw a piece of redstone dust on top of that. And that is going to connect to our dropper system, our item retrieval system, and also our exit system. So what we can do is when we step on top of this, like the whole thing should work at the same time. So let's go ahead and try this out real quick. You know, this is all a theory right now until we actually prove it. So if we step on this, we get our item back perfect, just like we wanted to, and then the door closes. And if we want to get out, we just walk over that 1 more time, and that is our exit system right there. We could also do something very similar to mouse door number 2 over here, and the whole purpose of this is to show you that you don't have to feel limited to what you see in tutorials or, you know, how the design is supposed to be. You can feel free to customize them and make them fit your needs. You know, you can do pretty much anything to them. It's just a matter of getting things rearranged and figuring out, you know, how you run these systems and, you know, experimenting around a little bit. You know, it's actually kind of fun to do it, and there's no reason not to. But now it's time to go ahead and move on to our 1x1 piston trapdoor. And we know pretty much how we're going to set this thing up, right? We're moving away from the mouse doors and into the trapdoor. So what we're going to have here is a piston facing upwards, just like that. And that's going to pull that block downward. Then we know we're going to want another set of pistons right here, getting ready to pull that block and that piston backwards, just like we did with our first mouse door design. That was our proof of concept, as I said. So this is pretty much the arrangement that we're going with. So just a little refresher on how this is going to work in case I forgot. We're going to first retract that block, and then we're going to retract these pistons right here. So those will get retracted just like this, and that is our opening sequence all done. And then to close it up, we're going to extend these pistons, and then we're going to extend this piston, and that is our closing sequence. Now let me make sure I get rid of these levers this time because they cause trouble. Now our method for activation is the same one we've been using. We're going to have a minecart with hopper hidden inside a block right here next to the door that we want to open. And that's going to feed through a line of hoppers and into a dropper where we'll get that item back. So I think I want to put the dropper maybe right here-ish, like right underneath this block right here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and put the dropper in. We'll put our hoppers in since we already know where everything is going to be. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll run our hoppers up all the way to the surface, just like this. And then we'll set our rail and our minecart with hopper and our hidden block, or our block that hides the one block to hide them all. I don't know. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm going to go ahead and get that set up. And just like we did over here with our mouse door, we're going to run the circuitry for all our pistons the exact same way, meaning we have comparators coming out of our dropper, and those comparators are going to run to a block with a redstone torch on the other side. So that way the torch is basically the opposite of whatever our comparators are doing, meaning that these pistons are going to open up our door once there's an item inside the dropper. That can go away. Once there's no item in the dropper, let's go ahead and take this out of here. You'll see the torches turn on, which means our pistons are going to turn on, which means our door is going to close. So we know we're going to be wiring this thing up the exact same way that we wired up this mouse door right here, the first one that we worked on. What we don't know is how we're going to get out of here, because we're falling in, but we can't really fall out of it. So what I'm thinking we do here is create kind of a little slime block launching mechanism that will take us out to the surface. So we're going to need a sticky piston just below this slime block that we put in, and we'll face it upwards just like that, and that should hopefully be enough to launch us out. The dropper, I'm not worried about that sticking. That is a non-sticky block. So let's go ahead and test this thing out. We'll pull the lever and, oh, perfect. We get shot right out of there. That's awesome. But since we are using a slime block launcher to get out of here, that means we are going to have to use either non-movable or at least non-sticky blocks in the areas surrounding the slime blocks. Anywhere the slime block's going to travel and come in contact with the block, we want to make sure that block is non-sticky or non-movable. But let's go ahead and at this point move back over here to our entrance. So this is going to control these two back pistons right here. So how I think I want to do this, pretty much the exact same way we did our mouse door over here, is run this signal straight into the blocks that control those pistons with an extended pulse. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and bring the signal on back this way and give ourselves a little bit of room for a pulse extender, and we can figure out how we want to get all that wired up. So let's go ahead and put the redstone dust in here just like we know it has to be, and we got a little bit too much room over here. So what I think I'm going to do is throw a repeater down right here into this block. We'll get rid of this, and then we can throw a comparator down right here. That's not a comparator, that's a repeater, that's a comparator. And then we can run this comparator into a block. This is just another way of doing it. We'll add a block right there and get rid of that. We're just running our redstone over top of that block right there so it doesn't interfere with the comparator. So redstone dust, that opens, but it's not quite a pulse extender yet. For it to be a pulse extender, we need to go ahead and put our redstone dust right there. Now that is a pulse extender. That is this entire circuit complete. Now for the other side, controlling this up and down piston right here, what we're going to be doing is placing a block right here. We're going to put a block over top of this torch and run our redstone just like that. So on this block right here, there will be a repeater, and then we need two pieces of redstone dust right there. And that's it. That's all there is for this side. So now I think we can go ahead and give this thing a test run, see how our opening and closing sequences work. So that was our closing sequence as you just saw, and this is our opening sequence. Perfect. Now that we have our entrance system done, I want to work on our exit system and item retrieval system, and I don't believe this pressure plate will influence that piston at all. Great, because that pressure plate is the key to this whole thing. That's what's going to activate everything. It's going to shoot an item out of this dropper, it's going to open up our piston trap door, and it's going to shoot us out of there. So how I think we're going to do this is we're going to definitely need to run a set of repeaters into these blocks containing the torches. This is the same system that we use on our mouse door as well, by the way, so we know we're going to want that there. We're also going to want to activate our dropper, so we're going to put a block right behind that, and yeah, let's go ahead and put the stuff we know is going to be here. So we're going to have a repeater right here, a repeater right here, and then we're going to have redstone dust right here, and right here. The next thing we want to do is give ourselves a little bit of room for a pulse extender, just like we did on the mouse door, and this could probably be compacted down quite a bit, but to be honest, I'm not super worried about that at this point. I just want to get this thing working. So we're going to connect all these up on this side. We're going to put 2 more pieces of redstone dust right here and 2 comparators facing away from each other right here. Now we just have to figure out a way to hook all this up to the pressure plate that we want to trigger it. So I think what we're going to do is run the signal out to the side right here. I don't want to run it down because that's going to activate the piston. So we're going to run out to the side and then run it this way, right next to the piston. We're going to put a piece of redstone dust right here and a repeater right here going into this block. Now from this block, what we're going to do is we're going to take the signal out of the other side of it. So we can probably do that with the redstone dust. No, we can't, because that takes the signal away from our dropper. So let's go ahead and instead of using redstone dust, let's use a repeater instead, and that will accomplish exactly what we want it to. Hopefully. Let's go ahead and give this thing a little test run. So this is our opening sequence right here, and then we can pop on down here, we step on the pressure plate, we get our item back, and then if we step off of it, this whole thing should close up. Perfect. The last thing we need to do is hook up our slime block launcher and figure out how we're going to get out of here. So what I think we are going to do is we want the slime block launcher to go off a little bit later than everything else. So what I think we're going to do is run the signal down here and then into a block that's next to the piston. So I think both those blocks are going to contain repeaters, and we'll put them on full delay. So let's go ahead and throw out one right here and throw out one right here, and hopefully that's long enough for our piston trap door to open before the slime block launcher goes off, because if not, we're going to have one heck of a headache. So I think at this point, before we do our final test, we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of a floor in here and probably also some walls, just so we can get a feel for how this thing is actually going to be once we get it all built. And with that taken care of, let's go ahead and give this thing a little test run. So we'll throw our item in, we'll have our opening right there, we can pop on down in here, we can walk this way, get our item back, and then the door should close. Sounds good, sounds good. Now to get out of here, we step right all over this, and we get popped right out. That's awesome, as does the minecart. Oh, and then it goes back into place, I think. Let's double check and make sure. Let's go ahead and throw another item in here. We'll have the opening sequence. Yeah, minecart looks like it's just fine. We'll step on out. We'll have our closing sequence. And let's actually make sure that it's closed. Let's have a look at it. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell it was there if not for the colored blocks there. If it was regular floor, you wouldn't be able to tell. And to exit, we walk over to the slime block, get popped on out. We still get a little glitchiness with the minecart, but yeah, I mean, overall, this thing works, and I'm super happy with it. So there you go, guys, a couple examples of 1x1 piston doors, how to wire them up, and their potential applications. We got our piston trap door right here, which we use a trap door to open. We got our mouse doors over here, which I'm going to use cheese to open because that seems fitting. We got that guy right there, and of course we got our other little simple mouse door right here. There we go. Okay. So yeah, that is it for us today, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed it, if you found it helpful at all, please be sure to hit that little thumbs up button. That would mean a whole lot to me. And if you want to see more, please remember to subscribe. But as always, I just want to thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I deeply appreciate it. And until next time, I am Lobo, and I will see you guys later.